A very good evening to you and welcome to Biz in Focus. You're with me, Azra Hassan, and tonight with me is the President of the National Chamber of Exporters, Mr. Ramal Jayasinghe. Good evening, sir, and it's nice to have you back.
Thank you, Azra.
So, Mr. Jayasinghe, going straight into the topic, how do you think exports in Sri Lanka has it increased or has it taken a step back? How do you think it's moving?
All right, year over year, in the year 2018, we saw an improvement, and that was also month over month incremental improvement, and we were heading fairly steadily. And at the end of October, we closed on a note of 15 billion US dollars in terms of export, against a target of 17 billion, which we need to meet by the end of the year or in a couple of days' time. So I would say a lot of action had been taken, a lot of things worked, particularly the services sector. We saw improvements. Then we saw improvements in the agriculture sector that contributed mainly to the export growth. And towards September, we had tourism also getting included as an export into the export basket.
Right.
So all in all, the picture seemed promising.
So it is in a good position. Now we're moving forward.
It is like this. Over the last 51 days, we saw a slowing down because of the uncertainties and the political turmoil that we all witnessed. So there was a slowdown, and also we had the concerns of the EU and the US concessions, or the general preference scheme, or the GSP scheme may have been, we ran the risk of that being withdrawn. So the importance or the significance of that is that 70% of our items that are exported on goods enjoy a GSP concession.
Right.
So if that had been withdrawn, we would have had a real uphill task. So fortunately, that never went out, and it has been restored. But now we got to play catch up over the last 51. What we went through over the last 51 days.
Right. So even issuing a statement yesterday, the European Union and the US ambassador in Sri Lanka, they have given us assurance that there will come in the steps that have been taken by the political authorities in the country. Catching up is going to be a bit of a challenge. How bad is it going to be?
All that is like this. I can speak for what I saw a while ago on the tea exports, and the association says that they have a target of 15.5 billion, but they are concerned about the 0.5 billion US dollar target. So they might reach there is a growth of 4% year over year, which is promising. But again, you have the estate sector right now with the labor issues that, and they're on strike. So meeting the target could be a challenge. But nevertheless, they have shown growth. And of course, the tea sector is taking certain actions on how they can sustain the growth into the next year. So we will have a shortfall definitely, because catching up on 50 days in what you're talking about, 2 weeks, right, is a near impossible task. So fortunately, the contracts that our exporters enjoyed remain by and large intact. So everything should go well, but unfortunately we are going into the holiday season the next week. So that could hamper our progress. And anyhow, we are still soldiering on, because as we speak, we still don't have a cabinet. So we are trying to do this business of exports in the middle of all uncertainties around. But however, I think looking forward, that we have matured as a society and also as an export community, that irrespective of the political environment, that we should come to a level of business as usual, provided we have the good relationships, and where the political environment is concerned, that we maintain the advantages or the privileges that we enjoy with countries like the EU and the US, so that we have a smooth flow of our exports.
I think it is commendable, the fact that with all of this confusion in the country, the export sector still is going strong, like you mentioned, and we expect all sectors in the country to have a downfall or collapse because of this uncertainty in the country. But to hear you say that we are actually moving forward, but in a slow rate, I think that is quite...
Yeah, the thing is, we didn't crash. In a normal scenario, if you took everything, I mean, what you have seen in other situations or other countries that have such a similar situation, it has seen a crash. but we didn't crash, and I think that's remarkable.
So does it mean that we have laid a good foundation?
Definitely. And also I have a lot of hope on the National Export Strategy, the NDS, which even over the last 50 days there was certainty that that wouldn't be changed. So moving forward, we need to get that program implemented, and the mechanisms to enable the NES to actually work should be now strengthened. So that would ensure that if we have lost $1 billion or $2 billion in terms of target, because the next, I think by 2020 we are looking at 20 billion in terms of exports, which is not too hard a target, I feel, then we should be able to get to exceed there. So if we have the structures or the infrastructures kept intact and maybe developed, yes, I think there's hope.
But it requires stability in the country, the consistency of policies. And
so that is where the NES comes into play, because we have all for the longest time been clamoring about the inconsistency of policies, and now we have it through the NES. So that's why I said a while ago, where if we have the NES implemented, that brings in the consistency. So therefore we have a open roadmap, or we can develop a roadmap to take us where we need to go in terms of increased exports.
But the cabinet is yet to be sworn in, and we still have our ministers to be appointed to take up the relevant ministries. How will that affect? Don't you think that delaying this process can affect us, your industry, more?
It's like this. What we proved over the last 51 days is that we've been resilient as an industry, as an export community. We've been resilient. I mean, let's face it, for the last, at least for the last 1 month, we didn't have a government, or a couple of weeks. Technically, there wasn't a government, and still business went on.
Yes.
So I think there is a very good connect between export and the buyers, and an understanding. So I think we developed relationships. But of course, it cannot be taken for granted, or we cannot be in a complacent situation.
Sure. Yeah.
I think more or less everybody was on a wait and see mode, and now we have overcome that, at least for the time being. And now we got to strengthen on those, on the actions that we took over the last 50 days, where we didn't allow our export performance to drop drastically. It has dropped, but I think it's dropped to a level that we could catch up, but not to the level of target, I doubt.
Right. We can survive.
Yes, but not thrive. So the idea is to thrive, right? So we should get to the thrive mode as fast as possible.
Sure, with that we'll go into a short commercial break. Don't go away. After all, this is the Biz in Focus. Welcome back to Biz in Focus. I'm in conversation with Mr. Ramal Jasinghe, the President of the National Chamber of Exporters. Mr. Jasinghe, now Sri Lanka is not the only country that is facing issues when it comes to the political arena. For instance, the United Kingdom, they have the issues with the Brexit deal. How will Brexit affect Sri Lanka, a country as small as Sri Lanka? How will it affect?
All right, it is a very significant issue that we need to think about right now. One thing is, out of exports to the EU, Britain takes over 30% of our exports,
Right.
and therefore we enjoy the benefits from the EU. But the other day I met an Englishman who was at a presentation I made, and when I raised it, he said the best way you can sort the EU out, you tell the ladies in London that their lingerie is going to cost more if they do not give us extend the GSP and the facilities that they enjoy right now. Because I think EU is one of the main, at least Britain is one of the main destinations for apparel and foundation garments. So I'm sure that, and the long relationship and the cozy relationship that and the associations we had with Britain for the longest time, I'm sure that we can arrive at restoring probably even better conditions. And there's also thought that probably the Commonwealth rather than the EU might give a better access to if that bloc can actually come up with a similar arrangement, and also access to new markets. But these are still thoughts.
Right. I think it is the implementation that matters the most.
Yes, and also forward thinking, because from now we should work on, because okay, it's virtually, okay, the Brexit is in the balance, and I think the Prime Minister of Britain is making headway there. So we need to be alert, because a country like us, though small, it has a big impact
Right.
on our exports and also on our economy. So what do we do then? So do we wait till the last minute? But I think it's about time that we started preparing and thinking about the impact and what we need to do in the event of a Brexit.
Right. So now going back to the situation here at home, the damage has been done, and at least to a certain extent. What do you suggest that we do to make sure that we will not fall into a situation again when it comes to your industry?
That's an excellent question, Asra, because what happened in the thick of things, the joint chamber movement, all the major chambers in the country got together. And at least the fact that we could all work together was a victory. And if you put our strengths together, that's basically the economy of the country. And it's the private sector. And that is a very strong and formidable group. Now, if that unity remains, and actually we all got together and we met His Excellency the President about 2 weeks ago and addressed the concerns. Now, there was a discussion, and I think that would be the future, so that whatever political environment, if the chambers get together, then we are strength, and we might be able to mitigate the risks that such a situation, or maybe even a worse situation, if it does arise, that the joint chambers will have a say in the running of the country, and at least in the economic side, because at the end of the day, if we don't manufacture, and if we don't export, and if we don't produce, or if we don't express ourselves as a voice, then we will not be heard, and then you cannot sustain the economy of the country. So for the longest time it has been, I mean, the balance has been state and the private sector, but as they say, the private sector is the engine of growth. So forgetting any political uncertainty, at least to develop the country, I think all of us, irrespective of our status, and we have seen that, we have met a point of congruence, that we will get together on issues and we will address these issues and move forward as a national movement. And the encouraging thing, Nazra, was that when we tried to meet, there are foreign chambers like the AmCham, the European Chamber, the German Chamber, they too were ready to work with us. So I think that the chamber movement in its entirety, both the national and the expat chambers, can make a significant difference.
Right, but how are you going to encourage the local manufacturers here in Sri Lanka to be like, stay strong, we are still going to get through this? How are you going to do that?
So that would be again our role, the role that we play in terms of the free trade agreements that are around, to make sure that they are secure. All right, we understand and we respect the view that you need a mechanism to get inclusion into the global marketplace, as well as to be able to expand our markets, because catering to 22 million people will get us nowhere. So we need free trade, but it has to be equitable. And also there's got to be a cooling off period. Now there's a thing called a negative list, where so many items on that list can be traded here without any barriers. But do we enjoy that same thing in those territories? And also you have the question of scale. So these are issues that need to secure, or we need to sort out to secure our manufacturers. And also for our items to meet the so-called standards that they would require, we need a period. So maybe there are items that might take off immediately, some items that will take time. Now we've done well in the confectionery industry. We have biscuit manufacture and certain items that have done well in and tea, branded tea that have done well in the overseas markets. But in overseas markets you find non-tariff barriers, which is not written in black and white. But you'll find interstate barriers, and then you have quarantine and so many other issues that go beyond the scope of the FTA. In short, you might say it's dirty tricks, right, to make sure that your items don't get a free flow there. But as far as we are concerned, we are very open, and what you see is what you get. So that has to be addressed with whatever arrangements we get. And also through research and development, to make sure that we have consistency in supply and consistency in standards. And there's the other concept of country of origin, which is essential for international trade. And we need to get find a roadmap to make sure that we are qualified, or that we get into the country origin standards. So those are issues that we are working on right now. And I think once we iron that out, local manufacturer would be more encouraged and more secure to invest in R&D as well as in capacity building.
Right. Mr. Jasinger, one final question. Now, people of this country, I think what they need right now is assurance. Assurance that the sector, your export sector, whatever the sector, will not collapse. What can you tell about at least the near future? Can we move forward? Can we achieve the targets that we have laid for us, at least in the next year?
We have come to the stage either you produce or perish, or you export or perish. So there is no looking back. Right? So we got to find some way out, and the only way is forward, or the only way is up. You can't go down. You can't get worse, right?
Or stop.
Or you can't. So otherwise we collapse as an economy.
Right.
So with that backdrop, all efforts should be made, and particularly with policy consistency. And I must say, over the last 3 years, there were attempts, like the new trade policy, and out of which the national export strategy came out. Now, if those pillars are maintained, irrespective of the political environment, because those were designed to withstand any change, and then you get a clear path. Now, we had the Vision 2025 that was released a couple of months ago. So, if we have the roadmap, that gives a a level of comfort to all stakeholders of the economy to work towards that. So I think that's the best assurance, and also to be sincere about the implementation of these. So I may be talking of utopia here, right? But I don't see any other way of us moving forward. To be sincere, then our budgets, or what you call vote of account, should be conducive to play the catch-up game first, and then to maintain economic growth.
Right.
So a lot lies again still, unfortunately, on the political environment, but I think we matured now, and we got to move away from the impact of a changing political environment.
Thank you, Mr. Jasinger, for joining us on our Biz in Focus show tonight.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. Have a good night.